Sarah Martinez adjusted her navy blue dress for the third time as she walked across the parking lot toward the Marine Corps base. The afternoon sun was bright, and she could already hear the distant sounds of families gathering for the graduation ceremony. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her small purse, not from nervousness about the event, but from the weight of emotions she had been carrying for months. Today, her son Michael would officially become a United States Marine. After 13 grueling weeks at Parris Island, he had made it through boot camp. Sarah had dreamed of this day since Michael first told her about his decision to enlist. She remembered that conversation clearly, how he had sat at their kitchen table, his eyes filled with determination, explaining that he wanted to serve his country and make something of himself. As a single mother who had raised Michael on her own since he was 7 years old, Sarah had always been his biggest supporter. She had worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, sacrificing her own dreams to ensure he had everything he needed. There were nights when she fell asleep at the kitchen table, exhausted from her shift at the diner and her evening job cleaning office buildings. But seeing Michael's face light up when she attended his school events or cheered from the sidelines at his baseball games made every sacrifice worth it. The decision to join the Marines had not been easy for either of them. Sarah worried constantly about his safety, especially with ongoing conflicts around the world. But she also understood Michael's desire to serve, to be part of something bigger than himself. His father had been absent from his life for so long that Michael had grown up searching for male role models and a sense of belonging that the military seemed to offer. Walking toward the ceremony grounds, Sarah thought about the letters Michael had sent during boot camp. His handwriting had always been messy, but these letters were different, more careful, more thoughtful. He wrote about the physical challenges, the mental toughness required, and the bonds he was forming with his fellow recruits. Each letter revealed how much he was growing, how much the experience was changing him from a somewhat directionless teenager into a focused young man. Sarah found her assigned seating area among hundreds of other family members. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and pride. She looked around at the other parents, many of whom seemed to know exactly what to expect. Some wore shirts with their Marine's name and photo, while others carried signs and banners. Sarah felt slightly out of place with just her simple dress and small camera, but she was here for Michael, and that was all that mattered. As she settled into her seat, Sarah caught glimpses of Marines in their dress blue uniforms preparing for the ceremony. The sight took her breath away. Soon, her son would be wearing that same uniform, representing values of honor, courage, and commitment. She had watched him struggle through high school, unsure of his direction, sometimes making poor choices that worried her sick. But the military had given him structure and purpose. The woman sitting next to Sarah introduced herself as Mrs. Chun, whose son was also graduating today. They began talking about their experiences as military mothers, and Sarah learned that Mrs. Chun's husband had been a Marine years ago. This made Sarah feel even more isolated in her experience. She had no military background, no understanding of the traditions and expectations that came with this life. During their conversation, Sarah found herself unconsciously touching her left shoulder, where beneath her dress sleeve lay a tattoo she had gotten many years ago. It was a small, intricate design that held deep personal meaning, though she rarely showed it to anyone. The tattoo was a reminder of a chapter in her life that she had kept hidden from Michael and most people she knew. As the ceremony was about to begin, Sarah felt a mixture of pride and anxiety washing over her. She was incredibly proud of what Michael had accomplished, but she also feared what the future might hold. Would he be deployed overseas? Would the military change him in ways she had not anticipated? These questions had kept her awake many nights during his time at boot camp. The sound of marching feet interrupted her thoughts as the new Marines began filing onto the parade deck. Sarah's heart raced as she searched the formation for Michael's face. When she finally spotted him, standing tall and proud in his dress blue uniform, tears immediately filled her eyes. He looked so different, older, more confident, more mature. The transformation was remarkable. Captain David Rodriguez stood at attention near the reviewing stand, his own dress blue uniform pristine and his bearing reflecting years of military service. At 32, he had seen several graduation ceremonies like this one, but he never tired of witnessing the pride and emotion on families' faces. Today felt different somehow, though he could not quite put his finger on why. Rodriguez had joined the Marines 12 years earlier, following his father's footsteps into military service. He had served multiple deployments overseas and had recently returned to a stateside assignment. Part of his duties included participating in graduation ceremonies and helping to coordinate family events. He took these responsibilities seriously, understanding how important these moments were for both the new Marines and their families. As he scanned the crowd of family members, his eyes fell upon a woman in the third row who seemed to be wiping away tears as she watched the formation. There was something about her demeanor that caught his attention. She appeared both incredibly proud and somewhat anxious at the same time. He had seen that combination many times before in parents who were experiencing military life for the first time. Sarah continued watching Michael throughout the ceremony proceedings. He stood perfectly still, his eyes focused straight ahead, every inch the professional Marine she had always hoped he would become. She thought about all the times she had wondered if she was raising him correctly, if her love and guidance would be enough without a father figure consistently present in his life. The commanding officer began his speech about the significance of earning the title Marine and what it meant to serve their country. Sarah listened intently, trying to understand this world that her son had chosen to enter. The words about brotherhood, sacrifice, and dedication resonated with her own experiences as a single mother who had sacrificed so much for her child. As the ceremony continued, Captain Rodriguez found himself periodically glancing back toward the woman in the blue dress. Something about her seemed familiar, though he was certain they had never met. Perhaps it was simply the universal expression of a proud military mother, something he had witnessed countless times before. The formal presentation of credentials began, and Sarah realized that soon she would see Michael receive his eagle, globe, and anchor, the symbol that would officially make him a Marine. Her emotions were overwhelming, a complex mixture of joy, pride, fear, and love that threatened to spill over at any moment. When Michael's name was called, and he stepped forward to receive his credentials, Sarah stood up instinctively, her heart pounding with pride. This was the moment they had both been working toward, the culmination of years of dreams and months of intense training. As she watched him shake hands with the officers and accept his new status, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not just for Michael, but for herself as the mother who had supported him every step of the way. The ceremony continued with various presentations and speeches, but Sarah was lost in her own thoughts about the journey that had brought them to this point. She remembered Michael as a little boy, asking questions about his father and why he had left. She remembered the teenage years filled with challenges and uncertainty. And now, here he was, transformed into a United States Marine, ready to serve his country with honor and distinction. As the formal portion of the ceremony began winding down, Sarah knew that soon she would have the opportunity to see Michael in person, to hug him, and tell him how proud she was of his accomplishment. She was nervous about this reunion, wondering how much he had changed during his time away, hoping that the closeness they had always shared would still be there despite his new status and responsibilities. The ceremony concluded with thunderous applause as the newly minted Marines were dismissed to reunite with their families. Sarah stood up quickly, her heart racing with anticipation as she searched the crowd of uniformed young men for her son. The parade deck became a sea of emotional reunions, mothers crying, fathers beaming with pride, and siblings jumping into the arms of their Marine brothers and sisters. Sarah spotted Michael before he saw her. He was scanning the crowd, his posture still reflecting the military bearing he had learned during boot camp. When their eyes finally met, his face broke into the biggest smile she had seen in years. He began walking toward her, weaving through the crowd of celebrating families, his dress blue uniform making him look like a completely different person from the uncertain teenager who had left home 3 months ago. When they finally embraced, Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. Michael felt stronger, more solid somehow, and she could sense the newfound confidence in his posture and movements. They held each other for a long moment, neither wanting to break the connection they had both missed so desperately during his time away. "Mom, I can't believe you made it," Michael said, his voice deeper and more mature than she remembered. "I was worried the travel would be too much for you." Sarah laughed through her tears. Nothing could have kept me away from this day, sweetheart. You look absolutely incredible. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. They spent the next few minutes catching up, with Michael introducing her to some of his fellow Marines and their families. Sarah was struck by how close the young men had become, how they seemed to share an unspoken bond that came from surviving the challenges of boot camp together. She could see that Michael had found the brotherhood and belonging he had always searched for. As they talked and took pictures, Sarah noticed a Marine officer standing near the edge of their group. He appeared to be observing the family interactions, possibly as part of his official duties. She paid little attention to him initially, focused entirely on her reunion with Michael and meeting the people who had become important to him during his training. Captain Rodriguez had been watching the reunions with the satisfaction that came from seeing families celebrate these important milestones. His duties for the day were nearly complete, and he was looking forward to heading home to decompress from the long ceremony. However, something continued to draw his attention to the woman in the blue dress and her Marine son. As he moved closer to congratulate the new Marines and their families, Rodriguez got a clearer view of the mother and son duo. The woman appeared to be in her early 40s, with dark hair and kind eyes that reflected both strength and gentleness. There was something about her that seemed familiar, but he could not place where he might have seen her before. Michael was showing his mother around the base, pointing out different buildings and explaining some of what he had learned during his training. Sarah listened intently, trying to absorb everything about this new world her son had entered. She wanted to understand his experience, to be able to support him knowledgeably as he continued his military career. During their conversation, the warm afternoon sun became quite intense, and Sarah felt herself getting overheated in her long-sleeved dress. Without thinking, she rolled up her sleeves to cool down, revealing the tattoo on her left shoulder that she typically kept hidden. The design was intricate and colorful, a military insignia combined with dates and symbols that clearly held deep personal significance. Captain Rodriguez was greeting families nearby when he happened to glance in Sarah's direction just as she was adjusting her sleeves. The sight of her tattoo stopped him completely in his tracks. His conversation with the family in front of him faltered as his attention became entirely focused on the design he could see on Sarah's shoulder. The tattoo was not just any military insignia. It was specifically a Marine Corps emblem combined with what appeared to be memorial information. Rodriguez could make out dates and possibly a name, though he was too far away to read the details clearly. What struck him most was the professional quality of the tattoo and the way it seemed to tell a story of loss and remembrance. Sarah was completely unaware of the attention her tattoo had drawn. She was absorbed in her conversation with Michael, who was explaining the significance of different aspects of his training and what his next assignment might involve. She had temporarily forgotten about the tattoo being visible, something that rarely happened since she was usually very careful to keep it covered. Rodriguez found himself unable to look away from the tattoo, trying to make sense of what he was seeing and why it seemed so significant to him. Military memorial tattoos were not uncommon, but there was something about this particular one that resonated with him on a personal level. He began walking slowly in their direction, trying to appear casual while getting a better view of the design. Michael noticed the approaching officer and straightened his posture instinctively, recognizing the captain's rank insignia. "Good afternoon, sir," he said respectfully, causing Sarah to turn and notice the captain for the first time. "Congratulations, Marine," Rodriguez replied, extending his hand to Michael. "Outstanding ceremony today. You should be very proud of what you've accomplished." Sarah watched the interaction with interest, impressed by her son's professional demeanor and the respect clearly evident between the Marines. Captain Rodriguez seemed like a genuinely caring officer, someone who took his responsibilities to the younger Marines seriously. As Rodriguez shook Michael's hand and offered his congratulations, he found himself stealing glances at Sarah's tattoo, trying to read the details without being obvious about his interest. The more he could see of the design, the more familiar it seemed, and a growing sense of recognition was building in his mind. "This is my mother, Sarah Martinez," Michael said, introducing her to the captain. "She traveled a long way to be here today." Rodriguez turned his full attention to Sarah, extending his hand with a professional smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Martinez. Your son has represented himself and his family with distinction throughout his training. Sarah shook the captain's hand, appreciating his kind words about Michael. Thank you, Captain. This whole experience has been amazing to witness. I'm still trying to understand everything about military life, but I can see how much Michael has grown during his time here. During their brief conversation, Rodriguez continued to catch glimpses of the tattoo on Sarah's shoulder. The growing familiarity he felt was becoming impossible to ignore, and he found himself struggling to maintain his professional composure while trying to process what he was seeing. The tattoo appeared to include a name along with the Marine Corps emblem and dates. From what Rodriguez could make out, the dates seemed to correspond to a specific time period that held significance in his own military experience. His mind was racing as he tried to remember where he had encountered similar memorial tattoos and what connection they might have to his own service. Sarah noticed that the captain seemed somewhat distracted during their conversation, though she attributed it to his busy schedule and the many families he probably needed to greet. She had no idea that her tattoo was the source of his apparent distraction or that it might hold any significance for him personally. Michael was eager to continue showing his mother around the base and introducing her to more of his fellow Marines and their families. The reunion time was limited, and he wanted to make the most of their opportunity to celebrate together. He thanked Captain Rodriguez for his time and congratulations before beginning to move on to the next group of people he wanted his mother to meet. As they prepared to walk away, Rodriguez found himself struggling with whether to say something about the tattoo or simply let the moment pass. His professional training told him to maintain appropriate boundaries, but the personal connection he felt to what he had seen was becoming overwhelming. Mrs. Martinez, he called out as they began to leave, his voice betraying a slight tremor that surprised even him. I hope you don't mind me asking, but I couldn't help but notice your tattoo. It appears to be military-related? Sarah stopped and instinctively looked down at her exposed shoulder, suddenly remembering that the tattoo was visible. A complex mix of emotions crossed her face: surprise, vulnerability, and something that might have been recognition of the captain's genuine interest rather than casual curiosity. Yes, she said quietly, her voice carrying a weight that immediately told Rodriguez this was a deeply personal topic. It's a memorial tattoo for someone who was very important to me. The confirmation of what Rodriguez had suspected hit him like a physical blow. The pieces of recognition that had been building in his mind suddenly came together, and he realized why the tattoo, and even Sarah herself, had seemed so familiar. The dates, the design, the memorial nature of the tattoo, everything was pointing to a connection that seemed almost impossible to believe. Michael looked between his mother and the captain, sensing that something significant was happening, but not understanding what it might be. He had never seen his mother discuss her tattoo with anyone, and he was surprised by the captain's obvious interest in it. I'm sorry if I'm overstepping, Rodriguez said carefully, his professional demeanor beginning to crack as the emotional weight of his realization settled in. But would you mind if I asked who the tattoo commemorates? Sarah's face went pale as Captain Rodriguez asked about the tattoo. For a moment, she seemed frozen, as if the question had transported her to another time and place entirely. Michael noticed his mother's sudden change in demeanor and moved closer to her, instinctively protective but unsure of what was happening. The tattoo, Sarah said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, is for Sergeant James Rodriguez. He was Michael's father. The words hung in the air like a thunderbolt. Captain Rodriguez felt the ground shift beneath his feet as the impossible became reality. James Rodriguez had been his older brother, killed in action in Afghanistan 8 years earlier. David had spent years wondering about the family James had left behind, the woman he had spoken about in his letters, and the son he had never been able to meet. James Rodriguez, David repeated, his voice cracking with emotion. Sergeant James Rodriguez, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines? Sarah nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. You knew him? He was my brother, David said, his professional composure completely abandoned now. My older brother. He died in Helmand Province in 2017. The revelation hit all three of them with stunning force. Michael stared at the captain in disbelief, trying to process the information that this stranger was his uncle, family he had never known existed. Sarah felt her knees go weak as she realized she was face to face with James's brother, the sibling he had written to her about, but whom she had never met. "I can't believe this," Sarah said, reaching out to steady herself against Michael. "James wrote about you in his letters. David, right? He called you his little brother, even though you were both grown men. He was so proud of you for following him into the Marines." David nodded, unable to speak for a moment as waves of emotion crashed over him. "He wrote about you too, about Sarah and his son Michael. I tried to find you after he died, but I didn't have enough information. The military couldn't help me locate you, and James had been private about personal details in his official records." Michael stood between his mother and the uncle he had just discovered, his mind reeling with questions and emotions. "You're my uncle? My father's brother." The concept seemed surreal after growing up believing he had no family beyond his mother. "Yes," David said, looking at Michael with new eyes. "You look just like he did when he was your age. The resemblance is incredible." Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks as memories flooded back. "James and I were together for 2 years before he was deployed. When I found out I was pregnant, he was already overseas. We planned to get married when he came back, but..." Her voice trailed off, the pain of that loss still fresh after all these years. "He never knew about Michael," David said, more as a statement than a question. "He died 3 weeks before Michael was born," Sarah confirmed. "I wrote to tell him about the pregnancy, but the letter was returned with notification of his death. I was devastated and alone, trying to figure out how to honor his memory while raising our son." Michael had grown up knowing his father was a Marine who had died in combat, but the details had always been limited. His mother had shared what she felt appropriate for his age, but she had also protected him from the full weight of her grief and loss. Learning that he had an uncle who had served alongside his father was overwhelming. "I've wondered about you both for years," David admitted. "James wrote about falling in love with an incredible woman named Sarah, about how much he hoped to start a family with her. After he died, I wanted to find you, to let you know about his family, to be part of Michael's life somehow. But I had so little to go on." The three of them stood in the middle of the bustling reunion activities, creating their own bubble of intense emotion while families celebrated around them. Other Marines and family members began to notice the unusual scene. A captain in obvious emotional distress talking intensely with a new Marine and his mother. Sarah pulled up her sleeve further to show David the complete tattoo. It included James's full name, his rank, the dates of his birth and death, and the Marine Corps emblem surrounded by detailed artwork that told the story of their relationship and his service. "I got this after Michael was born," she explained. "I wanted to carry James with me always, to make sure Michael would know about his father's sacrifice." David examined the tattoo with reverence, seeing his brother's memory preserved in such a personal and beautiful way. "This is incredible, Sarah. James would have been honored to see this." "I have pictures," Sarah said suddenly, reaching into her purse. "I brought some photos to show Michael after the ceremony. Pictures of me and James together, and some he sent from overseas." She pulled out a small photo album that she had carefully maintained over the years. As they looked through the pictures together, David saw his brother in a way he never had before, as a young man in love, planning for a future that would never come. The photos showed James and Sarah together at various events, clearly happy and deeply connected. There were also pictures James had sent from Afghanistan, including some with other Marines that David recognized. "That's me," David said, pointing to a younger version of himself in one of the photos. This was taken about a month before James was killed. I remember him mentioning that he was writing to someone special back home. Michael studied the photos intently, seeing his father for the first time not just as a fallen hero, but as a real person who had loved his mother and had dreams for their family. The resemblance between himself and James was undeniable, and he could see family traits he shared with David as well. "Why didn't you ever try to contact the Marine Corps about us?" Michael asked his mother. "Maybe they could have helped us find Uncle David." Sarah sighed deeply. "I tried, honey. After James died, I was overwhelmed with grief and trying to prepare for your birth. When I did reach out to the military, I was told that personal information couldn't be shared due to privacy regulations. I was young and didn't know how to navigate the system. Eventually, I gave up and focused on raising you and keeping your father's memory alive." David felt a pang of regret knowing that bureaucratic obstacles had kept them apart for so many years. I went through the same frustrations from my end. The military takes privacy seriously, which I understand, but it kept our family separated when we needed each other most. As they continued talking, David learned more about Michael's upbringing and Sarah's struggles as a single mother. He was amazed by her strength and determination, understanding why his brother had fallen in love with her. Sarah, in turn, learned about David's military career and how he had honored James's memory through his own service. "James would be so proud of both of you," David said, looking at Michael in his dress blue uniform. He always said he wanted his son to have choices in life, to be able to serve if he chose to, but to know he was loved regardless of what path he took. Michael felt a profound connection forming with this uncle he had just met. "I joined the Marines partly because of him, because I wanted to understand what he died for, but also because Mom always taught me about honor and service, even though she never pushed me toward the military." "Your mother raised you exactly the way James would have wanted," David assured him. "I can see his values in the man you've become." Sarah watched the interaction between her son and his uncle with a mixture of joy and sorrow. She was thrilled that Michael would finally have family beyond just her, but she also felt the weight of all the lost years, all the family connections that could have been. "I want you both to know," David said seriously, "that you're not alone anymore. I know we can't make up for lost time, but from this day forward, you're family. Michael, you have an uncle who's proud of your service and wants to support your career. Sarah, you have someone who understands what James meant to all of us." The reunion was interrupted by an announcement that family time was coming to an end and that the new Marines needed to report for their final administrative tasks. The magical moment of discovery was being forced to conclude, but all three of them knew that this was just the beginning of their relationship as family. "I don't want this to end," Michael said, looking between his mother and his newly discovered uncle. "I have so many questions about my father, about our family." "This is just the start," David assured him. "We have years to catch up, stories to share, and a relationship to build. You're not getting rid of me now that I've found you." Sarah felt a sense of completeness she had not experienced since James's death. For years, she had carried the weight of preserving his memory alone. Now, she had someone who shared that responsibility and could help Michael understand his heritage in ways she never could. As they prepared to part ways temporarily, David gave Sarah his contact information and made plans to meet with them again soon. The impossible coincidence of their meeting felt like more than just luck. It felt like James had somehow orchestrated this reunion, ensuring that his family would finally find each other. 3 months after that life-changing graduation ceremony, the Rodriguez family had begun to rebuild the connections that had been lost for so many years. David had taken leave to spend time getting to know his nephew and sister-in-law, and the bonds between them had grown stronger with each passing day. Sarah found herself sharing stories with David that she had never told anyone else. Memories of James that had been too painful to revisit, dreams they had shared for their future, and the struggles she had faced raising Michael without his father. David, in return, helped fill in the gaps in Michael's understanding of his father, sharing memories of James as a brother, a Marine, and a man of deep conviction and love. Michael had completed his initial training and was preparing for his first assignment. Having David's guidance and mentorship had given him confidence and perspective that he had never had before. His uncle had become not just family, but also a career advisor and role model who could help him navigate the challenges of military life. One evening, as they sat together in Sarah's living room looking through more family photos and military memorabilia that David had brought, Michael asked the question that had been weighing on his mind for months. "Uncle David, do you think Dad would be proud of the choices I've made?" David looked at his nephew, seeing so much of James in his expression and mannerisms. "Michael, there's no doubt in my mind that your father would be incredibly proud of you. Not just because you became a Marine, but because of the man you've become. Your integrity, your dedication to your mother, your commitment to service. Those are exactly the qualities James valued most." Sarah watched the interaction between her son and his uncle with deep gratitude. For years, she had worried about Michael growing up without strong male influences in his life. While she had done her best to instill good values and provide guidance, seeing him connect with David had shown her how much he had been missing. David had also shared more details about James's military service, including the circumstances of his death. He explained how James had died trying to protect his fellow Marines during an ambush, earning a posthumous Bronze Star for his heroism. Learning about his father's final actions had given Michael a deeper understanding of the sacrifice and courage that defined his father's character. The relationship between Sarah and David had evolved as well. Initially connected only through their shared love for James and Michael, they had developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and understanding. David had become like the brother Sarah had never had, someone who could provide support and companionship in ways that honored James's memory while building new family bonds. David had also been instrumental in helping Michael prepare for his first assignment overseas. His experience and connections within the Marine Corps had provided valuable insights and opportunities for Michael's career development. More importantly, he had helped Michael understand the mental and emotional challenges of military service, preparing him for the realities he would face as a young Marine. As Michael's deployment date approached, the three of them spent increasing amounts of time together, creating new memories while honoring old ones. They visited James's grave together, where David shared stories about their childhood and their decision to both join the Marines. Sarah added flowers to the gravesite, and Michael left his graduation certificate there, symbolically sharing his achievement with the father he had never met. The visit to the cemetery had been emotional for all of them, but it had also provided closure and a sense of completion. Standing together at James's grave, they felt like a complete family for the first time, united in their love for him and their commitment to each other. David had also arranged for Michael to receive some of James's personal effects that had been stored with other family belongings. Among these items was James's watch, which David presented to Michael during a private ceremony. The watch had been returned to the family after James's death, and David had kept it safe, hoping someday to give it to James's son. This watch belonged to your grandfather, then to your father, and now it belongs to you, David explained as he placed it on Michael's wrist. It's not just a timepiece. It's a connection to the men who came before you and a reminder of the values they lived by. Michael wore the watch with pride, feeling connected to generations of family history that he had never known existed. The weight of it on his wrist served as a constant reminder of his heritage and the expectations that came with carrying on the family name. Sarah had also benefited from David's presence in ways she had not expected. For years, she had carried the burden of preserving James's memory alone, feeling responsible for ensuring that Michael understood his father's legacy. With David sharing that responsibility, she felt a sense of relief and support that allowed her to process her own grief in new ways. Through conversations with David, Sarah learned more about James's family background, his childhood, and his dreams for the future. These stories had helped her understand aspects of James's personality and character that she had never fully grasped during their relatively short time together. The knowledge had brought her a sense of peace and completion regarding their relationship. David had also encouraged Sarah to pursue some of the dreams she had set aside while raising Michael. With her son now grown and beginning his own military career, she had the opportunity to focus on her own goals and interests. David's support and encouragement had given her confidence to consider possibilities she had not thought about in years. As Michael prepared for deployment, the family dynamic continued to evolve. David was being transferred to a base closer to Sarah's hometown, which would allow him to provide ongoing support for both of them during Michael's absence. The geographic proximity would enable them to maintain the close relationship they had developed and continue building their family bonds. The night before Michael's departure, the three of them sat together sharing stories and making plans for staying in touch during his deployment. David shared advice about dealing with the challenges of being overseas, while Sarah offered her own words of wisdom about staying true to himself and maintaining connections with family. Remember, David told Michael, being a Marine is about more than just following orders or completing missions. It's about taking care of your fellow Marines and representing the values that your father died defending. Every decision you make reflects not just on you, but on the legacy he left behind. Sarah added her own thoughts about staying safe and keeping his family informed about his experiences. "I know I can't protect you from everything," she said, "but knowing that you have Uncle David to guide you and that you understand your father's legacy gives me peace about your service." As they said their goodbyes the next morning, all three of them understood that their family had been fundamentally changed by the chance encounter at Michael's graduation ceremony. What had begun as a simple moment of recognition had evolved into a complete reconstruction of their family identity and relationships. Michael boarded his transport feeling confident and supported in ways he had never experienced before. He carried with him not just his own hopes and dreams, but the legacy of his father and the love of a family that had found its way back together against impossible odds. Sarah watched her son leave with mixed emotions, but her sadness was tempered by the knowledge that he was not alone in the world. The family connections that had been lost for so many years had been restored, providing a network of support and understanding that would sustain them all through the challenges ahead. David returned to his duties knowing that his brother's memory had been honored and that James's son would carry forward the family traditions of service and sacrifice. The chance meeting had given him the family connections he had always hoped to find, and the opportunity to play a meaningful role in his nephew's life. Years later, as Michael advanced in his military career and started a family of his own, the three of them would often reflect on that day at the graduation ceremony when a simple tattoo had revealed the family connections that changed all their lives. The chance encounter had proven that some bonds are too strong to be broken by time, distance, or even death. The story of their reunion became part of their family legend, a reminder that sometimes the most important moments in life come when we least expect them, and that love and family connections can transcend even the most difficult circumstances. Sarah's tattoo, originally meant as a private memorial to the man she had lost, had become the key that unlocked a future filled with family, connection, and renewed hope. In the end, James Rodriguez's legacy lived on not just in the memories of those who knew him, but in the living bonds between the family members he had left behind. His sacrifice had meaning not only in the abstract terms of service and country, but in the very real and personal connections that continued to honor his memory through love, support, and shared commitment to the values he had died defending.